I'm Dr. Libby Saunier, the CEO of the Louisiana Policy Institute for Children, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our second annual Louisiana Early Childhood Symposium. We're glad to have you with us and look forward to a productive and inspiring day. A strong early childhood system does many things. It enables parents to work, supports those pursuing education or job training, and really lays the foundation for the next generation of a skilled workforce and leaders. Early childhood education is not only a family issue, it's a workforce and an economic development issue that impacts every corner of our state. Today's schedule features timely and thought-provoking presentations and panel discussions from leading experts and researchers. Together, we'll explore the current state and future of early childhood systems in our state, with a focus on solutions that move us forward. To start us off, we'll hear from leaders who see this continuum in action every day, but who are unable to join us. First, Louisiana's Commissioner of Higher Education, Dr. Kim Hunter-Reid. She wanted to share her perspective of how a strong early childhood system helps families participate in the workforce now, while also growing the talent of Louisiana's needs for tomorrow.
Welcome, early childhood leaders. I'm Kim Hunter-Reid, Louisiana's Commissioner of Higher Education. I'm delighted that you have gathered today with one shared purpose: to strengthen opportunities for children and families across our state. We share that commitment. 19 of our colleges and universities right here in Louisiana have child care centers, and we hope to open more. It won't surprise you to hear that our student parents tell us that having on-site, affordable, accessible child care is life-changing, and that two-generation approach is important. Research tells us when children have strong early learning experiences, this establishes the foundation for success that ensures that they start school ready to learn. And when parents have reliable child care, they can fully participate in the workforce, strengthening families, and as a result, businesses and communities thrive. Thriving families and a prosperous Louisiana is essential to our state's success. We are, as you know, in the talent development business. We set an ambitious goal that 60% of our adults in Louisiana by the year 2030 will hold a credential of value beyond high school, a certificate, an industry certification, or a degree. Today, we are at a historic 52.5%, with more work to do. To meet our 2030 goal, we must meet the needs of all students and our little learners too. The children in your care and ours are the college graduates, innovators, and leaders of tomorrow. You are our partners in talent development, and your work is critical to our success. Together, we can ensure every child in Louisiana has the strong start they deserve, and that every family in our state can prosper. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your leadership. Enjoy the conference.
Thank you, Commissioner Reid. We'll now hear from Secretary Susie Showen of Louisiana Works, formerly the Louisiana Workforce Commission. Secretary Showen brings a critical perspective on how access to childcare strengthens today's workforce and creates new opportunities for the talent of our state in the future.
I'm Susie Showen, Secretary of Louisiana Works, the state's workforce agency. Very exciting news. We changed our name from the Louisiana Workforce Commission to Louisiana Works on October 1st, and we are looking forward to an expanded mission in serving the businesses and citizens of Louisiana. Right now, Louisiana is experiencing a significant mismatch between job openings and skilled workers available to fill them. Thanks to the incredible efforts of Louisiana Economic Development Secretary Susan Bourgeois and Governor Jeff Landry, we've got a lot more jobs coming our way. I'm sure people have been hearing announcements of mega projects and so on here and there. We need solutions to the workforce challenge to ensure our state's ability to fully capitalize on these opportunities. But at the same time, Louisiana's people continue to struggle with poverty, and many of them experience barriers to reaching self-sufficiency. Removing these barriers clears the road to the American dream, while also contributing to the overall growth and prosperity of our state by providing a much needed workforce. One of the most significant barriers preventing our people from preparing for and taking good jobs is a lack of access to childcare that is high quality, safe, reliable, and affordable. No surprise to anybody in this room today. Early childhood education initiatives offer an opportunity to bring the parents into the workforce and allow them to raise their families with security and stability. And we know that early childhood education improves the future prosperity of the participating children all on its own. But we also know that children raised in stable and secure households are more likely to thrive as well. By expanding access to early childhood education, we improve the state's economic outlook right now and far in the future. We don't often come across things with this kind of impact. It's important that we pay attention when we do. I know that all of you today are in very good hands with the Louisiana Policy Institute for Children. I hope that the Early Childhood Symposium provides you with the energy and a renewed sense of mission to help move our people forward into a bright and prosperous future. Thank you for letting me speak to you today.
Thank you so much, Secretary Showen. That message really connects to our first panel of the day, which is focusing on economic development. This panel will highlight how early childhood education is essential to attracting and retaining businesses, building a strong workforce pipeline, and driving growth across Louisiana. We are fortunate today to have a panel of experts with us to see firsthand how childcare access and quality impacts our communities, and I'm excited about the insights we'll gain today. I'm thrilled to introduce our panelists. Adam Knapp, CEO for Leaders for a Better Louisiana, Michelle McGinnis, Senior Vice President of Southwest Louisiana Economic Development Alliance, and Mandy Mitchell, President and CEO of the Lafayette Economic Development Authority. All great friends and all great champions for early childhood education in our state. So all the panelists, to start us off, how do you see childcare as an economic development issue, not just a family issue? Who wants to take that one first?
Good
Mandy, you're up.
morning. I'll jump in. Y'all know me. I am not shy at all. Good morning, everyone. First of all, Libby and team, thank you all for leading this effort in advocating for elevating early childhood education as the important component of our state's viability as it is. So anyway, I just thank y'all. I'm happy to be here this morning. I'll start by saying amen and hallelujah to Secretary Showen's opening remarks. Louisiana is experiencing an economic renaissance like no other. Adam, Michelle, and I have been in economic development for a very long time, and we finally see that as a team, starting with Governor Landry and Secretary Bourgeois and local and regional economic developers, we are firing on all cylinders. But as Susie said, there are things that we cannot ignore. We have families that are plagued with generational poverty and other issues. And so we're looking at economic development through a comprehensive lens and not just go get the businesses, bring the businesses here, help the businesses grow and create jobs. But we are looking at Louisiana's citizens, families, children. How can we ensure that everyone takes advantage and is able to participate in our growing economy? And so when you think about childcare, it's essential. Early childcare supports the parents, and a special place in my heart for the moms, those moms who are often the member of the family that has to sit out if that family can't afford childcare. But it helps the parents in that way. It helps the children, the next generation, that future generation of leaders, and it helps our employers, which I'm sure we'll get into more deeply as the conversation goes further. So I'll just stop there.
Thanks, Mandy. Michelle, I see you're off mute. What you got for us?
Sure. As Mandy said, the state is really leading efforts across the entire state, including each region in their strategic planning processes and encouraging each region to fill in our own strategic plans to help align the entire state. And so included in that statewide plan and including our regional strategic plan, early childhood education is one of the top priorities. I feel that without it, our small businesses can't grow, which means our economy can't grow. So looking at early childhood education and quality childcare, I think is an important infrastructure that we have to include in each of our strategic plans, in our everyday work, and our voice that we have across the state. So I think we're all working together, as Mandy said, to ensure that it is on top of everyone's minds as we move forward.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Adam.
Yeah, thank you, Libby, and it's great to be on with my good friends Michelle and Mandy. And just to underscore again what was shared already, they had just a great economic development announcement yesterday in Lafayette. Significant construction and permanent jobs for a drone manufacturer. Where Michelle is in Lake Charles, probably twice as many industrial construction jobs are coming as are available in the Lake Charles area right now to build two massive liquefied natural gas facilities. From the Meta project, the Hyundai project, and the Capital Region, just an enormous amount of activity in Louisiana right now. And almost everyone that is in the business of helping companies decide where to locate talks about workforce as one of the biggest ways they evaluate communities where they go to, and the availability to find a pipeline of workers, both readiness for day one of the start of manufacturing or operations, but also just a pipeline of folks that are able to work. We know in Louisiana, as you said in your opening, and as Secretary Showen said, that to be able to make sure that Louisianans have access to that employment, we have to make sure that we're removing those barriers that prevent them from having that access. And so it is definitely an economic development issue to know that the readiness of workforce has a lot to do with making sure that the entire community of our state has the ability to go to work for many of these opportunities, and making sure that they have high quality childcare is a big part of that. And so we see that as a key facet of how we tell the story of what's possible for Louisiana when we're telling that story out of state.
Thanks so much to Adam and Michelle and Mandy for this. One of the things I take away as you each spoke, and also with Secretary Showen, is really seeing access to quality early childhood care and education as an infrastructure issue. If we don't have that infrastructure issue resolved, then that pipeline of talent that we desperately need in Louisiana makes it harder to get, because we want to make sure that our families can know that their little people are in a safe, healthy environment and they're being educated. So thank y'all for that. Mandy, from your perspective, what role does childcare play in helping parents enter and stay in the workforce? And what does that actually mean for employers?
Thank you, Libby, for that question. And, I'm going to start off with a key word that you just used, infrastructure. In economic development, we are always thinking about infrastructure. And in our minds, we immediately think about roads, bridges, water, sewer, electricity, broadband. I will say that access to affordable, high quality early child education, early child care is economic development infrastructure as well, and it should be treated that way. And so how does that child care help parents enter and stay in the workforce? We know this. You all have done a ton of research, and thank you for sharing that with us. In communities where there is adequate childcare availability, workforce participation is higher. And I'll come back to it again, especially for moms, especially for working moms or moms that are pursuing skills, education, whether it's 2 or 4 year degrees or certification, so that they can participate in the workforce. So when there aren't enough seats, or when childcare is not affordable, when it's not reachable for all families, the family has to make that tough decision to have one parent step back, or God forbid it's a single parent home. So, what that does is it limits the economic potential and it limits the economic mobility of families in our state. And that translates into workforce shortages. And when we're visiting with employers across the state, as we do on a regular basis, one of the main things that we hear is, I cannot find enough talent. I can't find workers to take advantage of the jobs I have to offer. So, two quick points that I want to share, which really sort of brings it home for employers and for those of us who pay attention to our economic health statewide and in our regions. Parental absences cost our state $762 million annually. And that's when we're looking at missed work, when we're looking at turnover and other related costs. The impact on the economy goes beyond just that one employer, or employers in one region. These absences have a total impact of 1.3 billion on our economy. Imagine how much stronger we could be if everyone had that ability to plug in and participate in the workforce.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mandy. And we're talking $762 million that's costing businesses, $1.3 billion lost to our economy. I often say this isn't small potatoes. This is big potatoes, and we've got to figure this out. Michelle and Mandy, what are some of the challenges for your businesses in your area are facing around access to childcare?
Sure, I'll throw in a few points for Southwest. We have a strong hospitality community in Southwest Louisiana, also industrial, both of which run pretty much 24/7, 365. And unfortunately, most childcare centers do not. And so that's a huge challenge for our workforce and our employers here, because of the shift mentality, the shift work going on, and not having that access round the clock limits a lot of families with their availability and their employment options. So I feel like that's one very strong aspect in Southwest Louisiana. Also, the quality, the number of seats, as Mandy mentioned earlier, especially for families with new infants. For instance, my daughter, she has 3 drop-offs in the morning because one daycare does not take infants, but had no place for her older child. And so, there's 3 drop-offs in the morning. That's a big challenge, then all the way into work. So families are struggling with this day in and day out. And so that's just a couple of aspects that I know in Southwest Louisiana is on our radar, and something that we'd love to partner with and get with businesses to come up with some solutions on. There's a lot of financial burdens for these childcare centers. The access to resources, astronomical insurance costs, building repairs, food, supplies, just everything compounds these issues for these smaller businesses, of which a daycare is a small business, and we rely on our small businesses in all of our areas. So those are a couple of challenges that seem to rise to the top in every discussion in our part of the state. Mandy, I'm sure similar.
Yeah, absolutely. Very similar. And I love that point you ended on, Michelle. We have to view our childcare centers as a key element of our small business community. These are small businesses. The daycare where my little one attended, where she first started out, my husband and I got to know the daycare owner very well, at a personal level, and she shared with us some of those challenges. And Michelle just talked about the rising cost of the insurance. Imagine you're taking care of someone else's, precious children all day, every day. So there are added insurance costs, the cost to provide healthy meals for the children that are attending these childcare centers, and the cost to pay their workers well and compete with other industries in the community. So I just wanted to highlight that point, that we have to lift up our childcare centers as small businesses in our community, and pay very close attention to supporting them. In the Lafayette region, the last time I had the opportunity to pull the data on childcare accessibility in our region, I found that there were nearly 450 children waitlisted for support, either through LA4, through the vouchers, or through CCAP, through the contracted seats. That's 450 families impacted by the inability to afford and access quality, affordable childcare. And that is accounting for only the people who meet the eligibility for some sort of state support. This does not capture families whose income may exceed those thresholds, but they may not make enough to afford quality childcare. And so, that has a ripple effect in the community. Those families who are unable to participate in the workforce. I'm a data geek, so I also look at labor force participation rates statewide, and in every region, including the Acadiana region. We have room for improvement. Labor force participation, we're looking at able-bodied people 16 and older who are working or actively seeking work. And in statewide, we're at 58.2%, compared to the US, well over 60%. Even when you look at the prime age, so that's 25 to 54-year-olds, when you're in your prime, Louisiana is only at 78%. The US is at 83%. And why that's important is the greater your economic health when you have more people, or as many as humanly possible, involved and engaged in the workforce. It affects the individual, the family, the community, the region, the state. And so, it's a thing. It is a real thing that has tangible impacts. And so, yeah, we're seeing it here in Lafayette and Acadiana as well. And I love our community. We are mounting up to look at how we as a team can address this issue so that our economy is as strong as it possibly can be.
Thanks, Mandy. I think there are several comments that both you and Michelle made. One, that they are small businesses, these early learning childcare centers. And if you have access without quality, you don't have access at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day. And one of the things that we frequently hear from our providers is related to, quite frankly, double, triple, quadruple the amount of what they are paying for liability insurance. And it is really an overhead issue that is crippling the industry, that we've got to figure out as we talk about really investing in small businesses of early learning and other small businesses. And the other thing that, Michelle, I'm glad you brought up this shift work piece here, because just as a teaser for a later session that we're going to have today, we just wrapped up a family childcare study. And y'all, people who are with us today, are going to get a preview to that study that Kellogg Family Foundation supported us with. But that is an avenue, and we've got to figure out, because early learning centers are definitely help, but family childcare meets the needs in small rural communities and for communities that have shift workers along the way. And how do we really support them? So that's just a tease for what's coming later. because it's a critical component of the infrastructure of the early learning community, because it's not just one type of thing. It's not just a center. It's not just family childcare. It's not just home visiting. It's all the pieces pulled together. So
I think-
Adam, for you,
Oh, I'm
go ahead, Michelle.
I'm sorry. One other point I wanted to make, you mentioned, a talent pipeline and how important that is. And we've got to include those families who are training for these higher wage jobs. And if they don't have access to childcare when they're training, that pipeline is broken. So we have families who need some upskilled training, and they can't take advantage of it because they don't have the access to affordable childcare. So it's a broken pipeline if we don't have that piece to it as well.
I completely agree. I just spent Wednesday in Alexandria with the Board of Regents, with community networks, with university programs that have, some early learning providers in there. And that's the very discussion is, how do we make sure that we're supporting these families that are trying to get the credentials they need to be in these better paying jobs to be able to support their families, really to help drive our economy. So thank you for bringing that in, because that's critically important. So for Adam, how does childcare factor in the broader conversation of economic growth, talent retention, and competitiveness for our state?
Well, two quick things too, just to build off what was said, to what Michelle's point was, if folks are in training and not able to actually participate because of lack of childcare or the burden of the expense of the childcare, it does sort of prevent that pipeline into work. And just to add to what to Mandy said, I love that she brought up the labor force participation rate, which you have to really be a data nerd. I love that she was dropping that for y'all. But that number that she shared at 58%, where Louisiana is it may sound, just like a number. It's, just if we're at 58 and the US is at 62, but in real economic impact, Libby, to competitiveness as a state, that's about 140,000 Louisianans not working in Louisiana that are working in other states that are at that US average. And so to put real, jobs to numbers, it does affect our overall economy. And so as Secretary Showen said, you have to look at the barriers of what it takes to help folks find pathways into work to get there. The other thing that comes to mind, Libby, is a number that came out this week or this last 7 days or so. The United Ways across the state are great about tracking a number called the ALICE population in Louisiana, which represents those folks in Louisiana who are employed, but are still not making enough to really cross the threshold of stability. And that number, they call it ALICE as an acronym, is 50% in Louisiana of households that are they're working, but they're income constrained. And that really gives you a picture of where childcare is critical for employment and workforce access. So it has a huge effect on our ability to take advantage of what our private sector economy provides if you can't have a pathway into that work. The other thing that I wanted to share that just was really interesting to me in getting ready for today is how many state business communities are working on this. When we talk about competitiveness, we think about Louisiana trying to keep up and do better to grow as fast or faster than other states. And the variety of states and state business communities that are working on childcare policy issues is incredible and varied. States as different as the state chamber in California and the state chamber in Texas agree that they're working on childcare policy issues. I work at an organization that has a business roundtable as part of it. The business roundtable is as different as Oregon and Florida are working on childcare policy issues. In Massachusetts, the same. And what we see is kind of across these big statewide organizations, they all have one shared recognition is what we were talking about today is childcare is an economic development issue. It is a competitiveness issue and something that we have to pay attention to make sure that the states that we compete with are doing this. We need to be doing it as well. One last one that I'll mention that jumped out at me is the state of Iowa has actually created a business grant program. They funded in about 26 million a couple of years ago to help employers who are setting up childcare support networks to make investments in the infrastructure for childcare services to make sure that they have the ability to compete at a higher level for talent. And so it just gives you paints a picture of how other states are thinking about this, and what really kind of weighs on the minds of state officials in Louisiana, I think, is how to make sure that Louisiana can continue to compete by thinking about the role that childcare plays in economic development.
Thank you, Adam. So I'm going to jump in here. I think Libby is having some technical issues, but you're so right. We are seeing other states catch on and really understand the impact and economic impacts of childcare as the workforce continues to grow. So I'm just going to throw a question out for all of you. So feel free to jump in. So what are some ways you've seen businesses engage with or support family-friendly policies? So including, any childcare solutions that you've seen or within the state or outside of the state. So whoever wants to jump in first can go right ahead.
I'll go. Um, so, Adam just talked about business roundtables and what other states are doing, which is something we pay very close attention to in economic development. It's funny that we compete with one another, but we absolutely love sharing best practices with one another every time we get together. And so I have the pleasure of serving on the board of the International Economic Development Council and the Southern Economic Development Council, which is 17 Southern states. So I have the privilege of interacting on behalf of our state with peers from across the entire country and the South. And I'll tell you that child care is a hot topic alongside affordable and workforce housing as an example. But nowadays, any economic developer worth their salt is paying very close attention to what keeps employers up at night and what's keeping community members up at night. And childcare is right up there. And so in economic development, as I mentioned, we pay close attention to these best practices. So couple examples I have been hearing about of how businesses are supporting employers: directly investing in on-site childcare or near-site child centers in collaboratives with other employers in their region. One example, a California employer who did this saw a 25% lower turnover rate among parents who use the child care center compared to their overall workforce. Another example that I have learned about is employers who are contracting with providers to provide subsidized backup care so that parents don't have to miss work when their regular child care falls through. The last example I want to share is one that my friend Chris Massengill and I have been paying attention to, and it's this try-share approach. Michigan and North Carolina, I believe, are the two states that have programs that support employer, employee, and the state each paying 1/3 of child care tuition. And look, Louisiana, we're not resting on our laurels. So yes, we do have the school readiness tax credits, and Adam was involved in making some enhancements to those in the most recent legislative session. And then last thing I'll say, I texted Libby late one night, not too long ago. The state of New Mexico just launched universal early child care. So let that sink in.
Yeah, let it sink in well.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Who else would like to bump
I'll
our
jump
back?
in a little bit. We, on our side of the state, we've noticed a few things. Of course, COVID had a little bit to do with this as well, but a more flexible work schedule. We have a construction issue in our area. There's, as Adam mentioned, our mega sites with our LNG facilities that are ramping up. A lot of people are moving around. A lot of equipment is moving around, so it does cause some challenges in our transportation. But the remote hours and the flexible hours, that really helps on the scheduling. but it's again causes a challenge when your daycares and your childcare facilities can't match those hours. But family leave, I know the state has taken an initiative to really look at some family leave time that will help with that as well. One specific example in Southwest Louisiana, we have a project that is also caused by the 2020, 2020. We have a housing authority property that was demolished during the storms and is being rebuilt. And we received a Choice Neighborhood Initiative grant to rebuild that area. And with that rebuilding comes a lot of wraparound services. And a high priority that we put in that plan was to have, along with the affordable housing initiative, to include a daycare on this facility. And it could be an opportunity for some of those residents to have a skilled, to upskill and become workers in that facility, as just as important to provide on-site childcare close to home, affordable housing, all tied into one project. So we're real excited to have started that project and see it come to fruition to help our low and moderate income families with that aspect as well.
I just want to add a story about Donaldsonville that just really has gotten me super excited. Michelle, you kind of reminded me in talking about kind of the restoration and kind of renovation project post-storm. There was a 150-year-old building in downtown Donaldsonville that had sat vacant for many years, and community leaders had sought ways to try to get it back into commerce. And the parish in Ascension Parish looked at all of the economic development activity that's been happening and recognized that one of the most important things they could do to make sure that residents in Donaldsonville had ability to take advantage of all the economic development activity happening in Donaldsonville, focused parish interests to restore the facility into an early learning center, and saw it as key to a way to make sure that they were both helping with reinvestment in their downtown at the same time as strengthening their economic environment to make sure that everyone in their community, or at least more folks in their community, would be able to take advantage of all of the activity happening. It just was a beautiful kind of synergistic way to think about both the challenge of a dormant building, a economic development surge of activity, and a way to make sure that residents had an education investment to lift themselves up. So it's just a really cool story. I thought that's relevant to your question, Libby.
Yeah, and I also think a part of the Donaldsonville story is they're going to build a second early learning center as part of their community because of all the economic growth that's being invested there. And part of the way they were able to do that is, and I'll give a shout out to John Diaz, who was with, Ascension Parish at the time. He was like, we have leftover juvenile justice dollars that we're not using, and we could build a jail for kids. But what if we invested early and really looked at evidence-based budgeting to know what the money has bang for its buck if we start early? And so to all of Adam's points, as well as to Michelle's point in her community, is like, if we make these investments along the way, they're great for our families, they're great for economic development and prosperity. And really, then your community can be a place that people want to stay in and you can raise your families in, which we always want to keep our Louisiana peeps here. So Michelle, from your perspective, what's the economic return locally or statewide when we support family-friendly policies, including childcare solutions?
Yes, thank you, Libby. It kind of seems like a no-brainer to those of us that have been working on this a while, but every dollar that we invest in early childhood education pays off in higher earnings and better schools outcomes, and reduce, as you just mentioned, reduce social costs later. So sometimes I kind of forget that it's not on everybody's priority list, that as it should be. To me, it's a no-brainer, but again, I've been at it for a while. So, but more importantly, businesses can also see the return immediately with less turnover, as we mentioned, and more reliable workers and and a strong workforce. So I think it's kind of evident, locally as well as statewide when you look at it that way. And of course, when we lose families that don't have that access, we lose tax revenue, we lose productivity. And really, when you look at thriving communities, they require those skilled workforce. And if they don't have that access of affordable childcare and place for their babies, then the workers can't participate. And then if you look at it the other way, we all lose that way. So I think it's again, I think it's a no-brainer.
Help us continue to make it a no-brainer for everybody else,
Right.
Michelle. That would be great. Adam, from your perspective, what policy changes or partnerships could make the biggest difference improving access to childcare for our working families in Louisiana?
Yeah, great question. Well, I want to first highlight some work that we did together a few months ago that I feel like is the potential to pay off substantially for our state. We've been interested in the school readiness tax credit, or a portion of the school readiness tax credits that applies to employers. And late last year, early this year, Libby and our team were having conversations about a fiscal session coming up. What can we do in 2025? And one of the things that jumped out at us is that the value of what was created as a tax credit for employers really didn't reflect the current cost of childcare for families. When we look across the state, and if you maxed out how much an employer could contribute for a seat, it really was still not enough to make a difference for what is needed for families at the current cost of childcare. So we took a look at what that program was doing and asked legislators if they would be willing to do something different with it. And so thrilled to announce, if you haven't been paying attention, that Act 454 was signed by the governor, which rebrands that as the Workforce Child Care Tax Credit. Doubles the value of that program for the value of a contribution, reflecting that if a contribution was up to $10,000, that an employer can get up to $5,000 in a tax credit back. So it's a shared expense where the state gives them a tax credit back and the employer puts up a part of that for their employees to have access to seats. It's a program that has been underutilized, we think, and hopefully by rebranding it and pushing the value more specifically to employers, there's a way to help make sure that more folks are thinking about the role and importance of that. The second thing I'd highlight is just the success, Libby, that has been happening in the Early Childhood Education Fund. Everybody here probably knows this, but that program has been matching dollars raised in the communities across Louisiana, and it has been staggeringly successful almost. That community fundraising has really stepped up, and a lot of the folks that are part of our organization across the state business community have been contributing locally into those programs. So much so that I think, to your question, Libby, one of the biggest policy things that needs to continue is we'd have to really encourage that more state investment is made to drive that forward. It's working, it's showing off its impact and its motivation to communities. But we have to make sure that it is a stable and reliable program to continue to grow this idea of kind of local and state shared interest to try to grow high quality early childhood seats. So I would say that's the second big thing I'd highlight, is the importance of that early childhood education fund.
Thanks, Adam. And you're teasing to sessions that are coming up. We have the U.S. Chamber Foundation coming in to talk about 45F, which is a federal tax credit, and how do we think about maybe coupling, this revised workforce childcare tax credit that Adam mentioned, which really plays into one of the things Mandy talked about earlier about the tri-share model. And we see that this might be our version of a cost-sharing model in the state of Louisiana. And we've got to figure out, and we're working with Better Louisiana and other partners about what's the easy button for businesses to take part in something like this. And then another tee up that Adam didn't know he was doing is we have a session about the Early Childhood Education Fund later as well. And really making the case that Adam said is that at the end of the day, the need is going to outpace what's in the fund. And so how do we have that sustainable funding in that fund to match what locals are doing, which is good government? it helps everybody have skin in the game, which we know is critically important. We had a couple of questions from our audience, and I wanted to pull them in here. And I believe this one is from Patrick Moore, if I know this writing well. He was saying early child care is an investment in all caps for companies. How can we really galvanize the long-term ECE funding from the state to match these private investments as we're getting more business and economic development in our state? And whoever wants to take that, have at it.
I would just say that I think we see the importance every year of directly communicating with folks in the legislature with practical understanding of what it means in their communities, that fund is playing a huge role to changes and impacts that we're having in the lives of families in their communities. And it's directly a credit to their work as legislators to prioritize that program. Mm-hmm. The flip side is to see what happens if it's not there. And I think we have to continue to make the point, you and all of us on this meeting, to that our legislature is doing a great thing and we need to continue it. The other thing that I would just point out is the numbers bear it out. We've seen the most recent evidence of that was in the LA First report that came out from the Blanco Center and ULL that looked at longitudinal data of the performance of kids who have been in early childhood education and how they continue to improve in overall literacy outcomes through their lives. We actually had a similar report from Council for a Better Louisiana, the organization we merged with, that came out a few years ago that looked at kids in LA4 and just saw the staggering kind of difference of kids who were in LA4 through the course of their high school on into work careers versus those who hadn't had it. So the evidence is there on Louisiana data. We just have to make sure that our policymakers see that.
And that evidence is there for 1 year of access to early childhood education quality. So imagine what we could do if we really look at the cumulative effect if children have access in those first 5 years of life so their parents can go to school and work. Michelle, I see you off mute. What you want to add?
Well, from a chamber perspective, I feel like we are in touch with our businesses on a regular basis, and to relay their concerns as well as our own back to our legislative participants to keep it on the top of their minds. We hear a lot about it during session, but I feel like once they're back home and it's not as up in the forefront. So I think as a whole, as businesses and as communities, if we can keep that message going year round and keep it again in the top of their minds, that once that topic comes back up during session, then they'll have heard all year long our message.
Thank you, Michelle. That's great. Mandy, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just say that, the data speaks for itself. I was just with Dr. Stephen Barnes, Rachel Veron, and Amy Barber a couple of days ago here in Lafayette, just talking about, early child care issues and just education issues in general and how to tie everything together. Speaking of the Blanco Policy Center, put the data out there, bring it to bear. And I mean, there's nothing like seeing it in black and white, the impact that making early child care accessible and affordable has. And then the only other thing I'll say is we love a good competition in Louisiana. So let's start looking at what other states are doing. We love benchmarking and we love to win. And I mean, that's what Governor Landry and Secretary Bourgeois are doing now from an economic development strategy perspective, positioning our state to win. So, again, I keep looking back at what other states are doing, other communities that are cutting edge, and there's not a conversation happening in economic development and competitiveness where early child care doesn't bubble up as a hot button issue.
Thanks for that. Because, that's the thing. If we think about the last 10 years, y'all aren't having these conversations, to your point, without access to quality childcare come up. And, if you think about some of the points you made earlier, women are disproportionately affected by this. But if we lost women in the workforce, our state's GDP goes down, and all of the labor participation rates. So like this is increasingly focused conversation that is happening at the state level with the leaders here that are on this panel, but also when you have a Secretary of Workforce like Susie Showen, and then with LED with Secretary Bourgeois, like it is so exciting to hear that this is a driving force behind their thinking of how do we make sure that we are able to meet the competitive needs that we need to as a state, but also how do we keep our Louisianians here? Because I know that that's a constant conversation the governor brings up many a day. We want to keep our people here so that they can thrive and we can have a stronger Louisiana. If you could give one message to business and community leaders about why investing in early childhood education matters for our state's economy, what would it be? And that's for all of y'all.
I can start. I would say that when we invest in childcare, we expand the workforce today, and we build the skilled workforce of tomorrow, and we make Louisiana a more competitive place to do business.
Love that. Thank you.
I'll jump in and, go back to something I said at the top of the call. Childcare is economic development infrastructure, and I will, say that in as many forums as I possibly can. It enables talented people to connect to jobs, it keeps businesses productive, and it strengthens our future workforce. And so I hope that we can work together as a team to tackle this issue for the sake of our collective economic vitality.
Thanks, Mandy.
I just want to add that if there was a message for employers, Libby, it's to realize and think about access to childcare as a recruiting tool. The more that we help employers think about their workforce recruiting challenges in new and creative ways, maybe it's not new or creative, but it is an important one to realize that if you're struggling, and one of the ways you may be struggling is that you're missing out on a part of the talent pipeline that might be possible to recruit if you help make sure that certain aspects that would prevent someone from getting to work, if you can help to remove those. And there are plenty of things we invest in to try to make a work environment fun or different or exciting that are expensive and at a cost of $5,000 to $10,000 per worker, as far as part of what you can do to help make sure that they are given access to work that's potentially an investment. You can make that trade-off choice to think about how to view that differently. And in that difficult workforce environment that a lot of employers find themselves in today, just encourage that they look at creative ways to try to do different things using childcare as a way to open up pipelines of talent.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, we want to retain who we have and we want to recruit more talent in our state. And to Adam's point about, look at creative ways of if we're trying to connect teams together and that takes resources. But we would say at the Policy Institute on our website is a workforce calculator that businesses can see approximately what they're losing annually due to childcare breakdowns. And those investments would be well spent in trying to create like an investment of $10,000 per seat for a child to be able to retain and recruit the talent that is needed to help our state grow. Thank you all for your valuable insights today. As we wrap up, I encourage everyone to contribute to the conversation after this panel. And whether it's through the networking, sharing resources, or collaborating on local investments and initiatives, together we can continue to make a difference in the lives of our youngest learners. I also want to thank each of you as panelists today. If I think about who's in this forward march with the North Star for families to thrive in Louisiana, it is the three of y'all. And anytime that we call or we ask, y'all are the first ones to step up and battle with us to make sure that we create a Louisiana that is going to thrive, and that one day we can, when somebody asks how the children are doing, we can say they're doing well. And so I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And I'm now going to turn this over to the illustrious, wonderful Dr. Candace Weber, who is our Chief of Partnerships, who's really going to give us directions for the rest of the day so that you can network and get to know each other on the platform that we're using. Dr. Weber.
Thank you, Libby. And good morning, everyone. And What an amazing panel, just to echo Libby's comments. And what an incredible way to start off our second annual Fall Symposium. And so before we break out to our different sessions and workshops throughout the day, just want to give a couple of housekeeping items. So each session will open in a separate Zoom window. And so at the end of the session, you'll return to the Zoom events lobby, just like you saw before you joined our opening session. You will see a full agenda. So from there, you would always just click join beside the next session you'd like to attend. We will have moderators available in each session if you need assistance, or if you have questions, you can use the chat features. If you run into any technical issues, our tech support team is standing by to help. So if you'd like to read more about a particular session or a speaker, you would just simply click on the session title on the agenda. That's where you'll find the full description. If you want to learn more about the speakers, you would click on their name and the speaker's bio should appear. And if you ever lose your place, if you log out of Zoom accidentally, or if your Zoom drops, not a problem. You just would head back to the Zoom events lobby and you'll be able to rejoin sessions. And actually, that's how you'll navigate going from session to session throughout the day. After each session, you will see a quick survey in the event lobby. So at the Policy Institute, we love data and we love using data to drive improvement. So please, please, please give us the gift of your feedback and complete those surveys after each session to let us know how you enjoyed it and how we can improve. Finally, we hope you will take the opportunity to connect, engage, and learn from the experts and each other today. We have well over 240 participants registered for today's symposium. So again, please utilize the chat feature. There's a chat feature within the lobby that you can engage, direct chat, group chat. So we have so much to learn and there's so much talent and experts available. Please take advantage. And so we are really excited to learn and see the incredible work that's happening in early childhood in Louisiana. So enjoy your day and let's make this another memorable symposium. The next sessions actually start at 10:05, so you have a quick break to head out to the lobby, maybe do some networking, and we will see you all in the first sessions. Thank you.